Cool. So I think we're live, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm understanding everyone properly behind these cameras. Welcome to Canlis Community College. I'm Mark Canlis. I used to run a restaurant. I still do. It's not been a restaurant lately. I'm joined today by Rahul Gupta of the Wing Luke Museum. Hello and welcome. Hello. It feels funny to say that because we've been hanging out on the roof for the last hour to get to know one another. And this is the first time we've ever done one of these classes. If you missed last night, we kicked off Canlis Community College with a cooking show explaining dumplings. Did you get a chance to watch
I didn't
that
get to see it, but everybody told me how great it was, which made me much more nervous about today.
I came home late last night to a bunch of misshapen and ill-formed dumplings that were absolutely delicious. So I don't know if we have the special talent in our own home, but we're learning. And so yeah, as by way of introduction, that is exactly what we're doing here. And if you're joining us tonight, thank you for tuning in for this conversation, the first in a series of social studies conversations where we use Canlis Community College to bring in the experts, and where Brian and I are hoping to learn a little bit. I believe that this pandemic is a hard time for many things. I believe it's a very good time to have a posture of learning, and that is something that we deeply want to do, or something that we're trying to take advantage of in this way. And Rahul, I couldn't be more pleased and honored to kick it off with you. So just a little bit about you, and also for those of you in the chat, I should just mention this, just like the bingo show, I'm joined here by my brother. He is on the chat thingy, the computer of sorts, and if you want to send him a little message, if you have a question for either of us, put that in and he'll just interrupt us, and you can participate in that way. But Rahul, you come to us from the Wing Luke Museum. You're the director of education there.
Yes.
You have a fancy pedigree of degrees. I was looking you up online. You have degrees from Columbia University and from Evergreen State College, right? But even cooler than this, and I didn't know this, you spent 20 years in a kitchen.
I did.
Cooking, running kitchens. And so in that sense, I think we have something in common, in the sense that we both are kind of into the food thing. I know that you cook at home.
I do.
At least when we first called, we were both cooking meals at home, and your dinner sounded way better than mine.
I don't remember what
I remember
cooking.
being really intimidated. I was like, "What are you cooking?" And you were like, "Oh, I got like 11 dishes in the fire, and I'm crushing it right now." And I'm like, "Cool, I'm microwaving something for my children." But we have kids the same age, and it's been fun to get to know you in this last little bit. So. Here's the thing, and can we just kick this off?
Yeah,
a lot of folks watching may have not been...
Can I drink this?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, casual conversation, the cocktail. We should just cheers to doing this the very first time. Thanks for being a part of this. Can you just start by talking about the Wing Luke? Also, I've never done this before, I should tell you, so I don't really know what I'm doing. Can you tell us a little bit about the Wing Luke Museum? If people haven't been there, or if they're not familiar with it, what is Wing Luke all about?
Wing Luke is about the personal story. It's understanding the larger histories that have happened, the ones that we can document with artifacts and primary sources and all of that. But just looking at that side of people's history, you don't get the people. And the museum is very much about what did this actual person experience? And how does that tie into the larger conversation? And we've been doing this for 50 years. 50 years. 50 years.
Okay.
And we are named for the first Chinese American, first person of color ever elected to office in the city council.
No way. See, I did not even know.
And that's Wing Luke.
Okay.
And he comes to office at the time when, well, segregation, redlining.
Yeah.
There's not equal housing.
We're talking the 60s.
We're talking the 60s.
50 years ago, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But he's coming into being in the 40s and 50s.
Sure.
Serving in the military, seeing the effects of the Japanese American incarceration.
Yes.
And he is very much influenced by
what he's
what is
seeing
happening.
around
Yeah,
him.
I always say zeitgeist, but that's because I like the word. But
For those of us with smaller brains, yeah.
the stuff happening at the time,
The stuff
right?
that was going on at the time.
and moving
yeah.
people. You know,
Okay.
we have one now. You know, we were
Okay.
just talking about, you know, we're in a crazy moment in our country. We are in the middle of uprisings.
Yes.
There is a zeitgeist. There is
Yes.
something happening. And
We have a pandemic.
so
we have an election. We
have
have
a
civic
pandemic.
unrest.
Yeah.
We have a lot that we don't know about how we function as a country.
And I want to see the museum that comes out from this. Right?
That'd be
But-
awesome.
So Wing Luke, he passes away.
Okay.
He serves on the council. He fights for equal housing. I'll say it that way. But it doesn't happen while he's alive.
Okay.
And he dies tragically in a plane accident. Equal housing does pass later.
Which was kind of his thing. Like he was,
It
he was
was,
the
but
champion of that.
But you have a Chinese American who is not working in a bubble just with Chinese Americans. He is working with African Americans. He's working with others throughout the city who believe in this. And here's the thing about Seattle: they voted 2-1 to keep segregation practices in place. Right? So
If we think this is new, it ain't. Yeah, so this has been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
He is one of the people who, so one of our goals in all of this is, and Canlis being 70 years old, so just slightly older than Wing Luke, I think Brian and I are always trying to understand, I mean, look, we didn't build this, right? Like, I didn't put this building here. And so you were just saying, those mom and dad sitting off in the corner, those are your parents? Yeah,
They're
they ran
very
it
nice.
for 30 years,
Yeah.
right? So in many ways, I can see the shoulders that we're standing on. We're fortunate enough that they're still with us and alive and present. And but I can't. But I didn't know my grandfather. I didn't know my I knew my great grandmother, but not my great grandfather. And so many ways, the things that we enjoy today. I'm standing on the shoulders of people who I never met and who I never knew and I don't fully understand.
Sure.
And I think our goal, beyond understanding my own grandparents, is when I look out at this city, I'm like, this is an amazing town. Whose shoulders are we standing on? Wing Luke would be one of those.
Wing Luke would be
literally
one of
of
those.
these
Yes,
people who
absolutely.
came. Yeah. Who, because we were talking earlier, if I just said to you, you know, Wing Luke is incredible storytellers. You are historians, but to me that word doesn't really quite do it justice, because when we say history, everyone falls asleep. But if we say, like, if I said, who are the people who just, when you walk the halls of that place at night, when you go to bed with a smile on your face, who warms your heart? Like, if you just took us for the next half hour to a few of the folks who, like, champions that I gotta know, people that I should be looking up, like, I don't know, take us there. Wing Luke's one of them.
okay, Wing Luke's definitely one of them.
But who pops to your head first?
Too many people.
Okay.
And I'm not. That's not a cop out. If I were to name a few, I would be disrespecting all the ones that I didn't name.
What's a
And-
better question then? Because you're right. Like, how could we talk about three?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe then I think when I'm wanting to get at it is like you personally, what do you gravitate towards? Or like,
I gravitate towards the stories that people don't necessarily know,
okay,
and the people who don't necessarily always have access to be known. And their
because you're talking
stories-
about maybe in a time when those stories disappeared,
Yeah,
or
but
were
that-
intentionally made to disappear because we didn't want to hear those stories.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I would argue also that even today, people still don't want to hear those stories. And when people come to the museum and they hear what we're sharing, and there's pushback, and we get pushback,
Yeah.
I don't mind pushback.
Yeah.
But I do like to lead people to this, how I am approaching the work, and how my team and how the museum approaches the work. And that is, just because it's a story you haven't heard before, or a piece of our history. When I say our history, I mean American history.
American history.
It's Asian American, Pacific Islander American history, but these are American stories. Whether they're immigrant stories whose children then are American,
Okay.
these are American stories. This is part of our history.
If I consider myself an American, I have to consider these a part of my story. in a
If you
certain
consider
sense.
yourself American, I have to consider the Mennonite story.
Yep.
I
Okay.
have to consider the Bavarian story. I have to consider all these European parts of the American story.
When we say
But
we're in this together, we also mean historically.
historically, we
Yes.
are in this together.
Yes.
Good, bad, ugly, beautiful.
And so why
Doesn't
not
matter.
understand the whole story?
So if you are introduced to a story you haven't heard before, that doesn't mean that that story doesn't matter. And once you've heard it, it doesn't mean you don't have the ability to connect with it. And that is the Wing Luke Museum. The way we do things, the way we make our exhibitions.
It's not too late for that story to matter to me.
It is
what you're
never
saying.
too late for a story, any
Yeah.
story to matter to you
Yeah.
or to me.
Yeah.
And even though I do this on a regular basis, I don't know everything.
Yeah.
Well, none of us do.
None of us do.
So I have to listen to a guest coming in and sharing whatever they want to share, and that story matters. And they may not be Asian or Pacific Islander American, right? But their story matters because
Sure.
they're trying to connect.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Take us, if you will, into some of those untold or hidden stories, those places that, I mean, look, I'm that person, right? I'm the one that doesn't know them. The one thing we're good at, or at least that I want to be good at in this company, would be hospitality. And I think of hospitality, just sort of a general thinking of hospitality is, oh, it's an invitation in. And that's a good answer. That's like a B+ answer. I think of hospitality as a making space for. It isn't just an invitation,
Yeah.
it is literally the carving out of space from one person to another. Like, hey, I may not have space for you, but I'm going to make it. I may not have time for you. Baloney. We all have the same 24 hours in the day. I'm going to make the time. I'm going to create that place. What if we do that? If we do that now, if we carve out a little space, can you tell us? Can you story tell? Can you take us to a couple of them? I want to invite you into that. Like,
Sure. What I want to start with is actually your grandfather. In creating this restaurant and his restaurant in the Broiler,
Yeah.
was it?
Yeah, the Broiler.
In Waikiki.
Yeah.
And
Late 40s.
it was. He saw a difference in hospitality between the way Japanese Americans, or Nisei or Issei, first generation, second generation, were sort of bringing you in the way
Okay.
you were describing hospitality, making that space.
Yes.
Versus, as I don't remember if you mentioned this, but I mean, my experience in restaurant industry, a lot of it is in European traditions.
Not a lot of it. In this country,
Not the same way.
most of it was being pulled from Europe. We were
Right.
taking our cues from Western Europe, from white Europe.
Yeah,
yeah
from
absolutely.
white Europe,
Yeah.
for sure. And when you flip that and you recognize that there's something else that is more powerful or equally powerful that people could embrace, that's a big thing. And so even when this restaurant opens up and your grandfather hires Japanese American women who had just come out of the incarceration during World War II, it's a continuation of that recognition. I kind of want to share stories to vibe on the food thing,
Yeah.
but I don't know where to start.
Earlier, we were talking, stay on the food thing because and maybe this is a good place to go from when we're training our staff in service. In orientation, it's an important piece for us to go back to the beginning. It's like, we look at these black and white photos on the wall, and here are these beautiful women. They're in their kimonos traditionally. These are the roots of Canlis' service. Every server who's ever been on this floor, standing on the shoulders of those incredible women. You were telling me a seafood story that I had no idea about.
Oh, yeah.
Like here we are priding ourselves as Pacific Northwesters on our oysters, right? And you're like, yeah, say those names out loud. Doing this Japanese, right? The Kumamoto oyster.
Kumamoto oyster.
Kushi, right?
Kushi oyster.
Yeah, we have these.
That does not sound.
It doesn't really. No, it doesn't. And so
that
I
has a
had no
place.
idea actually.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many of them I've slurped down not knowing. There, like, take me there. Like, what is the story even of shellfish in our community? Mile that way into the water. Like,
Okay. one thing I will say is where the museum is situated, where the Chinatown International District is situated, was very much an active location for the Duwamish people.
Okay.
And there's a tidal flat in that area that was great for shellfish.
Yeah.
And would actually trap fish in migratory times of the year.
Right in there.
Right in there.
No way.
And so that's a legacy that goes all the way back. And so all that native stock of shellfish are dying out. Several people have written about this over the years. We did an exhibition in 2011 where we told this story, and then Ruby DeLuna, actually from NPR, has a great...
Picked it up.
Well, she picked it up a couple of years ago, but she did a great job. And what's great about the story is it's not about the Japanese-American dude, right? It's...
As if there were one, you mean?
As if there was one who really did the import of shellfish seed, right? The oyster stock.
Sure.
That saved oyster farming for Puget Sound and Washington State. Hands down, that is the dude. But it was the fact that they didn't keep it for themselves. And so the Japanese-American Issei and Nisei cooperatives start growing out of that and expanding the use of more sustainable techniques that had been thrown out. So you had Native American techniques that were thrown out,
right.
even though Native Americans working in the industry.
Right.
But, European American practices killing the industry.
Yeah. After the oysters, and no regard for the processes that are being used forever and ever to sustainably grow those oysters.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think part of that is the moment. You've got the trains, you've got the ability to ship these things far, and
suddenly the demand
people
is up.
just looked at it and went, ooh,
Yep.
cha-ching. But it kills animals, right? I mean, we're eating the animals, but we're killing off these animals. And these folks, these Japanese Issei and Nisei, actually saved our butts. And what blew me away, I think, more than anything, was a couple years ago, we went to the Kitsap, and we went to a place, and I'm not going to say where, but I don't know if they want. You don't have to. Because I didn't clear it with them first.
Yeah.
But there was a 18-year-old kid who was walking across the oyster beds and doing a little tour for people, and he shared the same story. And I was like, man, how do you know? You're 18. Yeah. How do you know this story? He goes, well, it was part of my orientation. That's the power of story.
Yeah.
To recognize that it wasn't you who looks like you, who actually made it possible for you to be you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the interconnectedness of those stories.
Yeah.
And that kid got it at 18.
Yeah.
Right? I'm well in my 40s, and I'm still having to go, oh yeah, you're right.
I'm 46. You don't have to say your actual age.
I'm 47.
Yeah, okay. Well,
I don't care.
And when you mentioned that 10 minutes ago, it's like, if that's their story, that's your story. Yeah, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, note to self, you're speaking to me. Like, you're absolutely speaking to me. But, well, yeah, and so there are so many of those, like you're saying, and I think Wing-Luke does an incredible job. By the way, I'm just going to shamelessly I'm going to shamelessly promote Wing-Luke this entire time. I'm going to say Wing-Luke over and over and over again because I'm fans and I want that to happen. But,
I don't mind.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I figured you wouldn't. But okay, hold on a second. I want you to go back because we were talking about Tai Tung earlier.
Oh yeah,
and the lunch counter and Harry Chan and this family, this Chinese family that has created a safe space, and I think those are your words.
Chinese American.
Thank you so much. And I think those were your words that you said, like, that was a safe place for people to go. I want to hear more about that.
Okay.
One of our values is trustworthiness, and if we change that word a little bit, I would say safety. That's to say, if you trust me, then I'm a safe person for you. Okay. And you described this restaurant that way, and I want to know more about it. So can you just you take us there for a second, down to the
Sure.
idea? Yeah.
One of the other things we do is we tell personal stories. First time I ever went into Taitung.
And for those that don't know, we're talking about a restaurant.
We're talking about a restaurant.
Right
Taitung
down in the ID.
It's the oldest
It's been
Chinese
there
restaurant in Seattle.
1930s? When
1934,
1934,
I
okay. Makes Canlis look like a puppy.
These guys are amazing, though. They can still recreate dishes that they made in the original menu. And we've actually done that as the museum in tying local writers' books about Seattle.
Yeah.
Within those educational tours, we've recreated those old menus with Harry. So that people could go and experience that while they're going through.
No way.
And this is
you just say you guys do incredible tours. It's not happening during the pandemic, is that right? But if you haven't done,
we can talk about that later.
A food tour, yeah, okay. Just say what.
Let me finish Harry. So Harry's brother actually was the first person I met, and we're sitting at this lunch counter, and yes, you could smoke cigarettes at that time, and so I'm sitting there, and I don't know what to expect, but everyone there is talking. And it's everyone.
Yeah.
White, black, brown, whoever. And it's a great time. And it was one of the best lunches I'd ever had in Seattle. And then I learned more about that lunch counter and that was a norm for a lot of places.
And let's just pause just for a second here because you're going fast, but I want to go slowly.
Okay.
Here you are. You're sitting at this lunch counter. For those that haven't been, right? You're describing, there's people from all different walks of life sitting there. And you said it's one of the best lunches I've ever had. I'm just curious. I don't know what your answer is going to be. How much of that depended on the food, because I'm sure the food was very good, and how much depended on other things going on? That's to say, the vibe.
The food was good. The food was one of the lunch specials. Probably, I don't know, beef brisket.
Okay.
I like tendon, so beef brisket with extra tendon.
So that was good.
And bok choy, I think.
But you said it was one of the best lunches. I'm gonna pick on you for this because all the time people walk out of Canlis, it's one of the best dinners I've ever had, and I don't know if that's actually true. That's to say, I believe that you might eat a piece of pizza in college and it like blows your mind because you're like so starving and the grease and the fat, like, and there's more endorphins coursing through your mind in that moment as a 16-year-old kid, in the middle of the night. I don't know if Canlis beats that piece of pizza you ate at 3 in the morning in college.
Wow.
But I think that when you get here and you're like, oh, it's pretty outside and the servers are kind and the food is good and the wine is yummy, then in aggregate, it makes this special dinner. And I'm wondering if your lunch, you're talking about a restaurant that has been a safe space, no matter who you are in this country, no matter what you look like, no matter the color of your skin, no matter your ethnicity or anything. Somehow, in this counter, you feel okay. That's what I want to know about.
Here's why. All the staff, super nice. They knew people at the counter. I didn't. They knew people, but they didn't exclude me. They're like, what's your name? Oh, where do you work? And then somebody said, oh, I went on this trip. And I turned because I'd been to the same place. And I was like, oh, what'd you think of it? And it just felt very natural.
Yeah, it was easy.
And the thing about those counters, that's where laborers used to go. Your cooks, that's where they would go. And I'm not saying this about Canlis, but the industry is really bad at giving actual breaks. But when I was cooking, I got sick, even in very highly rated restaurants, I got sick of eating the food. So I'd run across the street and make friends with someone at the burger joint or whatever, and we would just share quick bowls of whatever they were eating and vice versa. That's how you made those connections.
Yeah.
Those lunch counters were where you made that connection.
Yeah.
And
Taitung's in particular has been doing it longer than anyone. In fact, you were teaching me about the green books earlier.
So in the era of the Green Book, and for people who don't know what the Green Books were, I'm
just going to say this out loud, would have been me this morning on the phone. So that
was really the first time you heard about the Green Book.
So that's what I'm talking about. Like, this is how far I have to come, right?
Yeah.
So and then there's a chance that there might be someone watching this who might be in my same shoes. Yeah.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Though Aragorn did a movie.
I know.
So,
but describe them, right? So this is a moment in our country's history, 50, 60 years ago. Am I putting myself in the right time frame?
We're talking 80. We're talking 30s. It started in the 30s.
Back to the 30s.
Yeah.
Okay. Where this was not a friendly place for Black, African American, brown, right? And so there were these green books were places that essentially guides such that these were places you felt comfortable being. Right?
If you were African American, you looked at this book and you could plan a vacation, you could plan travel, you could take your kids with more comfort and understanding that you were not going to be harassed, humiliated, threatened with violence. When you look at where those places are in Seattle, they're down there. And you had a number of them listed. It changes year to year. The one I can pull out my phone, but the one that one of my teammates sent me had the Atlas Hotel, and that was on Maynard, and that was run by the Marr family.
Okay.
But then you look at other years of the restaurants and whatnot, and Taitung is in that moment.
Yeah.
You've got jazz and blues happening up and down Jackson Street. That includes the clubs that are in Chinatown.
Okay.
Right? That includes the clubs that are in Japantown, Nihonmachi. And we assume that everyone's separate all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I could probably walk down the street anywhere and say, yeah, okay, that person doesn't like that person and that. But there's more of a recognition of condition that you start to see historically in those parts of Seattle. And one of the stories I heard about Taitung was, and like I said, personal stories, they're sometimes embellished. But you get a sense of how that person felt or the impact of what they did on someone else.
Okay. And
you take that and you look at the historical record and you put those together and you get that emotional connection. And, the story I heard, and this has stuck with me, is that someone knocked on the door at Taitung, and the door to the kitchen, basically, which is right next to the front door.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we'd like to order food, an African-American family. And they're like, no, come inside. And they're like, we don't want to cause problems. And they're like, no, just come inside. And I looked at, I don't remember if it was Harry or his brother, but it shocked me, for whatever reason, that a Chinese American-owned restaurant would follow those same Jim Crow segregationist practices. And I was like, wait a minute, did you guys let them in? Because I'm about to get up from my seat, right? And they're like, no, they came in.
Yeah.
When you go there, you see people from every walk of life.
Yeah.
That's a legacy. And they're not the only ones.
And I think that's what I want to get to, because again, this idea of hospitality gets thrown around a lot right now, particularly since in the restaurant world, there are now awards, there's the James Beards, there's all this sort of focus on it, right? And you've seen this, you came up in the industry. In the old days we used to eat, and now it just feels like there's just a spotlight for whatever reason on the restaurant industry. And I think what's striking me right now in this moment, if I'm understanding you properly, is that the legacy of hospitality in this city is coming from those restaurants that were listed in that green book. Like, those were the ones who are actually saying, wait a second, this is, like, let us make space for people who don't look like us, but let us insist that they come in. Am I understanding that properly? Is like, I'm going to make sure that you are welcome here. I'm going to fight for it. That's that carving out of space.
But I'm not even sure it starts with a fight. I think it doesn't start with a fight. It starts with a personal recognition.
Maybe fight's the wrong word.
No,
yeah.
but it becomes a fight. And so if you look at, and we talked a little bit more earlier about the Alasqueros and labor organizing and all of that. We can go there if we have time. But the fight happens because there's a recognition of condition. The civil rights movement affected, like I was saying about Wing Luke, it affected our communities who were here early on. And that includes some people from South Asian communities.
Okay.
And even though my parents came in the 60s, there are others who were here, and they were part of those efforts. There's a street in Oakland, no, Berkeley, that's being renamed for a woman who was actively fighting in the civil rights movement. And even the vice presidential candidate on the Democratic side, her mom was a vocal civil rights proponent. So it winds up not just a recognition of condition or what you're facing, but it winds up, well, if your butt's on the line, my butt's on the line. And I think why we do what we do isn't to say that you have to go out in the street or anything like that. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that we're all the same. The museum is very clear. Like, how many people are represented in that museum? We had to fight to have newer populations, but not even newer to the museum, represented in the museum. But the museum is designed to be more democratic and accepting of its failures, because that's how you move on. And so the museum has grown in its breadth of representation.
Cool.
And to say that our stories don't connect with white, black, Latino, anybody else, Native American, it's hogwash. Because none of those histories live in a vacuum. None of our histories. I mean, I'm surrounded. I'm going to call you guys out. I'm surrounded by a bunch of white boys. So,
yeah, totally.
But our histories are intertwined, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing we should do about it in that negative sense, except embrace, right? I truly believe we have to embrace that.
I want you to dwell on that. Do that again for me.
No.
No, I'm just saying, like, I'd like I want to hear more about that. You're saying, like, what does embrace look like? I guess that's what I want you to talk about. It would help me, like, go there a little bit.
All right. When I first started coming down to the International District, it was Chinatown ID, I was at Evergreen. I was coming up. Fell in love with the museum, fell in love with the neighborhood, late night karaoke, and the good food. You know, I'd come up for a show, and I could name the old bands. I mean, I left Austin with amazing music, come up to Seattle for amazing music, But I'm Indian American. I'm South Asian American. I am not Chinese American. I'm not Filipino American. And I'm not Japanese. I mean, I can keep going. But I am who I am. And there were people who got that I got it. And the people who ended up teaching me community organizing, really putting into perspective the college courses that I was learning, that there's real life implication of everything that I was studying. And that didn't come from college. That came from people in that neighborhood. And I found a way to stop talking and listen. And I'm not the only one. There's so many people I've met over the years who learned how to stop talking and listen. And I think there's a power in being able to do that. For example, if this was non-COVID, non-pandemic, and you came in and you went on to one of our historic tours or something a little bit more in depth, going into the old INS building, and you raised a question, we actually don't talk over you. We'll probe you to share more as to where that question is coming from. What is it about you that's connecting with the essence of that question? We put you into the entire experience.
You're leading by example, yeah. Right?
I'm not saying we do it well every time, but I'm saying that is what we're trying to do.
I have a hunch you do it better than most. I don't know, I was just going to guess at that. I mean, that's super cool.
I hope.
Yeah.
I do, I hope.
Rahul, we've got, I don't know, like a little less than 10 minutes, and I want you to get to Alascaros. Like, I want you to, can we go there? Is that cool?
Yeah, can I get to the shameless plugs too?
Anyway, and shameless plugs
shameless
all
plugs.
the time. Again, I'm here with Rahul from the Wing Luke Museum. No, we'll do shameless plugs a bit.
So the Alascaros are actually one of my I won't get into a ton of the history.
Okay.
Come to the museum. If you're not going to talk to me, there's tons. Go to the Filipino American Historical Society here in town. One of the best written pieces by the Cordobas, Auntie Dorothy, I've gotten to meet and actually learn from her. Filipinos in Washington State, I think that's the name of the book. But something about their experience just made a lot of sense. And it's taking imperialism and democratic principles and personal pride that I don't have to take this from you. I don't have to take it from you. Just because you want to dish it out, I don't have to take it. And I don't have to be a jerk about it. And by the way, when I'm done fighting, I'm going to go dance. And you're telling me I can't date this woman because she's white, she's black, whatever. I'm going to date whomever I want. And by the way, I like jazz. I mean, just it was always it just struck me that this population just got the way I see the world.
You said I am who I am earlier, like, I don't know, like 5 minutes ago. Is that coming from this? Is that a little bit where that comes from? Like
no, that comes from my own background.
Okay.
But
does that describe a little bit what your connection is? Like, they just had this thing, like, this is me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like, I get why.
Okay.
Right? Because I did my own thing. As one of my daughters told me maybe yesterday, Dad, you have a really weird life. You've had a very strange life. And I have. I mean, it's not typical. But it's a good one. And so did they. And it was tough. And they were tough. Like, I wouldn't mess with them. But why I love cooks, and I think I keep saying this, and I don't know if this is registered. I used to describe working and running kitchens as trying to herd, H-E-R-D, anarchist cats. Because every cook has a beef with something. And so they
You did mention anarchist cats earlier. Yes, do it. Go there.
And you can't herd cats, and hell if you can herd an anarchist cat. But one thing that I've found with every single one of them, a sense of justice, a sense of right or wrong, a sense that they're willing to vocalize. And up in the canneries in Alaska, so Alasquero comes from Alaskan workers, so Alasqueros.
Okay.
Some of the stories that we've been able to
back up just a little bit. So the Filipino men who were brought here to work or who volunteered to work in the canneries, but they end up heading up to Alaska. I mean, tell that story a little bit.
Okay, so the U.S. had imperial control of the Philippines. So the Filipino men who were coming in under that, in that way, versus the who we called the pensionados, who were more the students. They were coming in, and it was negotiations between governments to, this is a very simplified version, to place workers at the canneries. And so the Filipinos go into the canneries, and they encounter Native Alaskans, Native Americans from other tribes, African Americans, white European Americans, but there's a difference in practice. Your white European Americans are eating steak, and I get the lips and the bleep bleep, right?
Yep.
And basically, according to the contracts, if the cooks were not able to cook, you didn't have to work. So some of the cooks actually spurred the labor organizing by not cooking. and demanding decent ingredients for the people for whom they were cooking.
Yeah.
Which I think is reasonable. Why?
Yeah.
Cooks are about feeding and nourishing and hospitality, right? They're not about wham, bam, bam, slap, slap, slap.
With a heightened sense of justice.
With a heightened sense of justice.
Yeah.
Like, this is not okay. And I loved hearing those stories. And that they, along with other elements that spurred the organizing, these guys didn't just fight for themselves. They fought for themselves, but they fought for anybody who was getting screwed over. Can I say that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. You can't say that.
Okay.
You're good. You're totally good. I'll say it. They were getting screwed over. Yeah. No.
And that spills over, and some of those guys wind up in the kind of migrant worker circuits in the farms, and that organizing spills over, and then you have the connections with the farm workers as well. If you go all the way down to Delano, California, and just how interconnected these moments of democratic movement are. I love that story, and I could go into the detail, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but the fish we eat, the shellfish we eat.
Yeah.
I could talk about strawberries. You know, the great books, Strawberry Days. There's a whole bunch of great literature or scholarship out there that really shows us why certain things are on our plate. Mushrooms, the foraging of mushrooms. I can keep going. The best blueberries in Washington State.
So can I say it a little
Sidhu
more poignantly?
Farms.
Northwest cuisine, which gets thrown around left and right in the media and off the lips of many people who live outside these windows.
Sure.
All of it is resting on the shoulder. Not all of it. Okay.
All of it.
Maybe more poignant.
I'd be a
so
liar
many.
if I
You
said
just
that.
said the best blueberries. Yes. So much of it rests on the shoulders of these folks. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's
And
like
other folks we don't know.
and other folks we
from
don't. And
other
stories-
ethnic
yeah.
communities, from other, and to say that it was just those shellfish growers or just those strawberry farmers or just those isn't accurate. What's more accurate is it wasn't just that guy. It wasn't just that company.
It's
It was broader,
Yeah.
and it always has been broader. It's not. It's just an inaccurate picture to say it was only these few people.
And for a long time, we've been using an inaccurate picture. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that we've been trying to build a more accurate picture, and if we really sit back, we can do better. And I
Okay.
think a lot of the museums in this town do a better job than most. I
We
chose Seattle. I
are
love this city.
Blessed as we have an incredible city.
Oh, we live in the best city.
I'm a huge fan. Of
Let's
this
sit back
town.
and be cocky about Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, cocky or just straight up proud of flag waving. I think one of the exciting things about I don't know. It's not easy to be a restaurant right now, but
Sure.
it's super cool to have an opportunity. Even just we're meeting with a bunch of museums and classes. We're starting with you guys, and
I can't wait for the rest of your electives. By the way.
it's been. Not supposed to touch my microphone. It's been even just in doing what we've been doing. I feel like I'm like I've lived here so long. I've lived here almost all my life. I don't know these stories. You're telling me about my industry. You're telling me about my cooks, my servers, and my food in ways that I'm like, I didn't know. Like the honest truth is, I didn't know. And so, what a cool opportunity. I don't know. This
Here's
is a
a challenge.
forced stillness. This pandemic.
Chef Brady,
Yeah.
find out what his favorite ingredient is and why.
And why?
And then, is it Celeste?
Celeste.
Yeah. So
executive
your
sous chef
executive
here.
sous.
Yeah.
Ask her what's your favorite ingredient
And why? And just go there.
and see what they tell you.
Which is a cool thing, an invitation maybe into like, it's not like you have to be an expert so much as, I mean, if I'm hearing you properly, find the person that's right in front of me, which is literally my own staff, and ask a personal question, which is just like, hey, tell me your story. Tell me your favorite ingredient. Tell
Absolutely.
me. Hey, I want to get to shameless plugging.
Yay!
Okay? It's not shameless at all. It's super important. And I think what you guys are doing at the Wing Luke is so dialed in, but some of it is on hold. I'm also getting my brother with the eye contact over here. Can we just talk about the tours a little bit? Is that cool?
For sure. And the one question that keeps coming up,
Yeah.
you can't hear me, is book recommendations to be educated.
Cool. So do I need to
yeah.
repeat the question? The one question that keeps coming up is book recommendations. Do you have a couple of books?
Oh Lord.
Do
I
you
have so
have
many.
50 books? Can you, is there a couple that's come to the top of mind, or?
Can I do it this way? Because there's too many for me to list.
Yes.
I will put it on the Wing Luke website, the book list for Canlis students. And I will put a list of amazing resources, whether books or websites or otherwise, right? And just so everybody out there knows, these aren't just written by Asian Americans or Pacific Islander Americans. They're written by African Americans and everyone else. But, you know, there are parts of those stories that are just incredible. But yeah, I'll do that.
That'd be so cool.
Give me by Monday.
No, you have as much time as you want, but it's dawning on me right now. So 10,000 people signed up for this Canlis Community
I
College.
told you not to tell me how many people.
Oh, no, sorry, and a few. And so I'm just dawning on me that it would be so amazing if we start to create a reading list. I know they're all out there, but you'd be doing such a service to us if you just put your dozen favorite on a list, and I can send that out to the people who signed up.
You guys need syllabi.
Cool. We need a syllabi. No,
You're
we need
college,
a lot.
For goodness sake.
We have
you
no
need
idea.
Syllabi. I mean, what is this?
Trust us. I can't overemphasize. We don't know what we're doing, but we're giving it a go. We're giving it a whirl, and so
you make great old fashions.
We did. That's what we do well. Let's see. You did these tours, these dining tours. I know they're on hold because there's the pandemic and COVID. But like, talk about what can we look forward to out of Wing Luke in the next 2, 3, 4 months. Like, how do we support you guys right now, or what's top of mind for you? What are you working on?
Let me say this. Most of the educational work we do is with schools, and schools are in a tough position. So we've actually created very interactive live virtual tours for students to be safe at home. All of this is about being safe at home and still getting an opportunity to learn and have some fun.
Yeah.
And so those tours are huge, and being able to get that in front of teachers, we've gotten in front of most of the teachers we have worked with for the last decade. There's more teachers out there who are looking for more content. And we have tons.
And you
curriculum,
guys have it.
we have a website that's just dedicated to content that they can use directly in their classrooms, but then also the educational
So if
tools.
they're listening and they're connected to a school
But
of
even
any kind, we're
parents.
talking elementary all the way to university, all the way to college, is that right?
we'll work with, we have postdocs coming in, and we actually, and I'll start with kindergarten here.
Okay.
They're at the hierarchy.
We can flip it
we'll
around.
switch that.
Yeah.
But, you know, we drill down deeper and deeper, and we're really quite good at taking the same subject and going further, depending on their age, the grade, the type of class they're in, and all that. But more than that, we used to do under Chinatown Discovery Tours, which has a great history. And actually, one of my favorite people, Weimar, created this at a point where people were scared to come to the neighborhood. And she gifted this name and the tours to us when she retired. And under that, we've done food tours, neighborhood tours, all sorts of different kinds, looking at segregation and redlining, looking at labor fights.
These are walking tours where you're in the neighborhood, and many times you're eating through the neighborhoods, and
sometimes eating on those.
Okay.
Like Japanese American Remembrance Trail, no food. But so much information, and to realize that Japantown was much bigger than it used to be, and to be able to go into that eastern section that still remains, and then realize that there was even more geography that was taken from people. You know, what we consider the Central District, that had Japanese Americans running all the way through, and was shredded overnight.
Yeah.
And that's not okay.
Yeah.
Right? That is not okay. We don't do that to Americans, and we don't do that to each other, and we shouldn't.
But it is a part of our history.
But it is a part of our history, and
so
we have to own it.
To go down, to take the tour, to walk through it.
And we have to be humbled by it, and we have to say, what do you do to learn from that and to make sure that it never happens again? But so the food tours, that's where I just started going the serious route. let's go to the food tours.
Okay.
Food tours take food, a lot of ancient history, but also immigration history, and they blend that all together. And before the pandemic, it was a progressive dinner through the district, from Little Saigon to Nihonmachi or Japantown to Chinatown. It was that whole stretch that people don't realize that Little Saigon is very much, at least in our minds at the museum. I'm sure there's some people who are, they got issues. So, but being able to go in and to show the handcrafted, house-made food that people assume isn't being made in these restaurants because it only costs $8.
Right.
Well, guess what? Somebody cut them noodles for you.
Right.
Right? We may not have a showman shaving noodles in the window.
Tableside,
right?
But
But they're still in the back doing the same thing. And we wanted to promote that. But part of the reason for that is my particular position at the museum isn't just the education side, it's also thinking about the economic viability of the neighborhood, because that is our legacy. And so we have created these tours.
You have a really specific goal. I want to say it. Like, I think it's so cool.
What's that?
No restaurant in the ID, right?
No restaurant in the ID should ever close. No retailer. Not one business in the ID.
Yes.
Chinatown International District should close down because of the pandemic, period.
And it's totally possible.
It is totally possible.
So right now,
go eat some good food.
Go eat some
Go
good.
shop at the stores that are open, and I don't know which retailers are open at this point.
Yeah.
I know a few, but shout out to Momo,
But it takes-
Kobo. But
It takes this much work on the internet to figure that out.
It really
And
does
if you're tired
take-
of home cooking, you can order takeout.
You can blink and find
from
out where to go.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is a big enough city to support those businesses like this. I think it's an incredible goal what you're doing down there.
Thank you. But we can't take people on food tours like that anymore. So
For the time
we
being.
revamped them.
Okay.
Take Food Network meets History Channel.
Okay.
Going in and seeing a dish being created in a restaurant, coming back to our test kitchen and historic exploration through historic parts of our museum
Okay.
that are preserved in place. And so we combine the experience of being able to connect this fun activity of cook-along, like the dumplings you guys did yesterday, and that cook-along at home, share the recipe plus the ingredients, and they can go out and buy it. There were some people who, we saw that had takeout boxes in other cities, because this isn't just for Seattle.
Sure.
If you're anywhere in the world, you can join one of these tours now.
Cool.
I mean, the Zoom is kind of funny that way,
So
right?
it's
I shouldn't plug one, but like this online experience, it does change the game a little bit.
If someone were interested in this, what did they do? Go to Wing Luke's website, or
Yes.
how do you can sign up now?
You can sign up now, and our first
As in, like,
official
right now.
launch one is November 6th, and that should be live on the website.
November 6th.
And the tour is called Food for Thought,
Okay.
a dinner date with history.
Nice.
We always make a joke that in museums you have a colon, so you have a name and a subtitle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Bunch of
Museums love that.
deconstructionists, but
Okay.
yeah.
November 6th.
November 6th.
But here's what I can just give a call to action.
We're going to be pulling in local chefs,
Cool.
some of whom are James Beard Award winners,
Yeah.
right? And mostly Asian American, and just people from the neighborhood, and going into the kitchens of the neighborhood. So people are going to get to experience something that they would have gotten in person, but they can do it.
And it's for an awesome cause.
And it's the
And
same
it's
price for
understanding our
anybody in
history.
your household. So you want to shove everyone in your COVID bubble in there,
Done.
have a dinner party if
Done.
it's safe.
If it's safe.
If
If
it's
they're in your
safe.
bubble.
If they're in your bubble. Only if they're in your bubble.
So here's what I want to
Please.
happen. Rahul,
We're done.
our next class is not this serious. It kicks off a little bit. I want the people who are watching right now to basically jump off of leave our thing and go to the Wing Luke's thing and sign up for what you guys are doing.
Wingluke.org.
Wingluke.org. November 6th is the first one.
November 6th is the
I would just
first
we're going to fill it up
Food
right
for
now.
thought,
I'm just going
yeah.
to ask people to do that. If you're into what...
That's really cool,
What,
thank
do I
you.
speak into one of these cameras?
That
This
one.
is Rahul Gupta. Yeah, I don't even know how to do this. Like this one. And if you're into what he's talking about, first, I want to say thank you. Thank you, thank
This
you,
was
thank
fun.
you. Thank you for saying yes to our phone
This
call.
was scary as
thank
hell.
You for, yeah. Sweating over here. Thank you for showing up and spending time walking me through this morning and this afternoon. Thank you for sitting with us this afternoon. And if you are watching this and you like what he's doing, this is the Wing Luke Museum. This is Seattle. This is your work and your team's work, the incredible team there. And we just we want to say thanks. It's an honor to hang out and sit with you.
You guys have always supported us with our auction, with a lot, supporting the museum. And the other thing I wanted to plug, is something we call House Party. It started, this will be year 3.
Okay.
And it's a fundraiser for the museum that is, it's all about music and art and poetry.
Cool.
And
wait, when is it? House Party.
House Party. So I believe it's the week of November 17th. It's going to be virtual this year.
Okay.
But when it's in the museum, it's one of the best parties you
Cool.
could possibly go to.
So this year, do it virtual.
This year we're doing
Next
virtual.
year, hopefully, we're
hopefully.
live and in person.
Absolutely.
At the Wing Luke.
It's a blast.
I have heard rumor and legend of this party.
I mean, in 2 years, people are like, oh, you can do it again?
Yeah. Yes, the answer is yes.
The answer is yes, but not to get you sick. So
it would be amazing to support Wing Luke by signing up for either of those things, right? They're all available right now.
That'd be great.
And then, next year we'll figure out next year. We take this one day at a time.
Okay.
But cool.
That was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For being here. Cheers.
Cheers.
A distant 6 foot distant cheers.
Here, cheers.
What a pleasure.
Wait, can I do oppa? No.
I don't know. Now what do we do? How do we end this thing? Is it do we turn it off at some point? Do we wait? Do we down the drinks? How does it end?
Shall we end it?
I don't know. I don't know how to do it. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, cool. We're gonna go switch to the next one. The next one starts at 6:30, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Do they know what's
Unless
coming?
you're watching the debates.
Unless you're watching the debates,
If you like his haircut,
you're more than
just
welcome to
wait.
do. But the next one, we're gonna learn how to do a home haircut with Rudy's. So come back and we'll see you in a little bit.
And you.